And good morning to you. I'm Joel Ford and welcome to Face It and Fix It. I'm sitting in for Joya and Haigh, who's feeling a little under the weather. Joya, we hope that you're feeling better soon, that you have a fast recovery, and that you can soon come back to the CBC family. Well, today is the first anniversary of Face It and Fix It. It was exactly 1 year ago to the day that we came on here with three intentions: to face what was challenging us as a society, find a way to get it fixed, and to help. And we welcome our viewers from around the world here at home to Face It and Fix It on CBC TV8, Facebook, and YouTube. What's on your mind? What are some of the issues or the concerns you'd like to see addressed and more to the point resolved? That's what our show is about. We try above all else to help you face it and fix it, as the former Prime Minister, the late great Oneka, used to say. And if we can't, we'll at least try to point you in the right direction to somebody who can face it and fix it. Today we continue to focus on the environment in this Environment Month as we put some of the critical and somewhat unknown areas which need facing and fixing on the front burner. Today, climate change and its link to infectious diseases with the director at the Center for Biosecurity Studies, Cave Hill Campus, UWI, Dr. Kirk Douglas, a permaculturalist, Peter and Bernice Chase. They introduce us to the interesting world of permaculture, what it is, how can it be used in our fight against the old ways of farming and bring in better, more natural ways of farming. We'll find out. And what is the state of our bees? Yes, BEES, so important to our ecosystem and our food harvest. Well, executive member of the Barbados Apiculture Association, Belle, he'll put it on the front burner for us. And as we enter the crop over season, how are our visual artists faring? Our visual artist, Oneka Small from the Barbados Alliance, she'll be sharing her journey in the second hour. Remember that you can contact us by calling us at 228-5562 or 228-5563, or you can WhatsApp us, message only. Remember, you can't call, but you can message us on WhatsApp at 228-5562, or post your questions or concerns on our Facebook page at CBC Barbados. We'll be back with Dr. Douglas right after the break. Don't go away. And if you're just joining us, welcome to Face It and Fix It. I'm Joel Ford, sitting in for Joyanne Haigh, and Joyanne is feeling a little under the weather today, but we're hoping that she'll recover soon and she'll be back here with us at the CBC. Today we'll be looking at the apiculture. That's one of those things where it's about bees and how they help to pollinate flowers and therefore help us provide food for our table. So we'll be talking about that. But also, it's the first anniversary of Face It and Fix It. And when we first started this show, we wanted to look at certain things in our culture and in our society, and if you can't face it, you can't fix it. So we wanted to face these things head on, find the people who know how to resolve them, and make sure that we get them fixed. But you know how it is, no issue is fixed permanently. You may fix it now in this iteration and it resurfaces as something else. But we'll be doing our best here on Face It and Fix It to make sure that we bring you to the people who know how to fix it, how to resolve it, or to tell you how you can face it and fix it. It's the first anniversary of Face It and Fix It. There's no cake. I don't understand cakeless anniversaries, but I've got my coffee. Be good to go. Our first guest is Dr. Kirk Douglas. He is the director for the Center of Biosecurity Studies, KFIL campus of the UWI. And we'll be looking at the center and its work. Good morning, Dr. Douglas.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I am good. Your mother was a fan of Kirk Douglas, the movie star?
I am not sure, but she said not. She said it's because of the ease of which you can write the name Kirk.
I'll pronounce it right.
All stroke. Yeah, I pronounce it as well. So I'll go with that.
Welcome to Face It and Fix It, Dr. Douglas. So first, let's talk about the Center for Biosecurity Studies at UWI KFL. What is the Center for Biosecurity Studies? What does that even mean?
Well, the Center for Biosecurity Studies is the agency and not the center, which is it is done it was conceptualized to examine a number of biosecurity issues within not only Barbados, but within the Caribbean. And when I speak to biosecurity, I know people go, I don't quite understand what that means, but it just means one life with freedom from anxiety. So if you think of everything that causes you anxiety and that will threaten your life, that is what biosecurity encompasses. But that remit is too wide to cover in one organization. So what we have done, we've gone about looking at focal areas which we can then work on and then through. So the three focal areas that we have at the moment are border security and trade, climate change and its impacts, and maritime issues and the blue economy. And these are three of the major issues that we have as it relates to biosecurity. When we think of the vulnerabilities towards biosecurity, you think of the 4 T's. The first T is tourism, and we know that the Caribbean is very heavily dependent on tourism. Then we think of trade. That is also another very a very strong vulnerability for national biosecurity systems across the region, and these are areas where we need to strengthen if we are to reduce the impacts of climate change in particular, and a number of different other threats, biosecurity threats. But I speak to climate change because I know this is something that most persons are very familiar with. It is one of our focal areas, and it has an impact on infectious diseases. I think everyone is quite familiar with SARS-CoV-2, or commonly known as COVID-19, and the impacts it has had across the globe. And we at the center want to be the leader where we are showing and helping and assisting regional governments in terms of constructing their biosecurity systems to the extent that they reduce the impacts, the negative impacts of these imminent threats to lives and livelihoods within the Caribbean. And I think that we are not doing enough to secure that at the moment. I still think that within our legislative frameworks, also within the way how we've constructed or the way we even approach things, has to change. It starts with us, each one of us, even with the hurricane season that we have. We hear the Department of Emergency Management, we'll hear a number of other public government offices speak to the issue of preparedness. But we have a culture, unfortunately, that is very reactive. We don't actually go in or kick into gear until something happens. And then we go into, action, whether it be panicking, going to the gas station, everyone's lining up to put gas in their vehicles, or to the supermarket, if we hear a weather system is coming. So I think that's where we need to improve as a society and as a region. I think we definitely need to change that. And that has to also flow right up into the decision makers at the policy level and at the parliamentarian level as well.
Dr. Douglas, let me stop you there, because you said quite a lot. So I want to break it down make it a little easier for our audience to understand. So I'm going to start with something that really resonated with me, which was biosecurity and trade. I don't think any of us realize how fragile supply chain systems were around the globe until we had the pandemic. Now, all of a sudden, you can't get anything. Everything is slowed down, et cetera, because of these supply chain issues. So let's start there. How can the Caribbean strengthen our supply chains when so much of this is global and so much of it is really outside of our control? If I'm ordering produce from California, it comes in on a refrigerated boat. So are you telling me now that I have to grow my own strawberries rather than importing my strawberries? Or stop eating strawberries altogether and stick to mangoes?
Yeah, I think it has to do with, you're speaking to the issue of food security, and that is linked also to the supply chain. And I think within the Caribbean, we definitely need to improve on that. And I commend the Prime Minister for the linkages that she's managed to form with the government of Guyana. I think that's a progressive move. And I think collectively as a region, we have to shed the mentality of, I can do it all on my own, and we have to band together. The rate of change and the increase of threats that will come our way will test the resolve of this region. And we have to prepare. Remember I said at the beginning, we have to shift our minds away from reacting and go into more being more anticipatory as it relates to how we approach different issues. We have to look at sustainable ways of economic development, because what we do in terms of the anthropogenic changes that we inflict on our environment have detrimental effects. Perhaps not acutely, like right in next week, 2 weeks, but eventually you start to see the impacts, the impact manifest itself in a way that we perhaps, if we had known, would have done things differently. I'll give you one example as it relates to infrastructure, which is one of the three factors. We have infrastructure, we have human, and we have the environment. Those three factors play a significant role in terms of biosecurity. So within the context of Barbados, right now we're about to embark on a major roadworks program. The question that I had in mind when I first heard that is, are the drainage systems that we're going to be putting in, are they going to be done in such a way that they're really going to be able to cope with the new climate that is coming our way? Because what the climate projections are really saying is that with respect to rainfall, you'll have less total annual rainfall. So at the end of the year, we're going to have less rainfall. But that does not mean that we won't have rainfall during the year. What we will find is when we do get rainfall, and we've been seeing it, we're going to have very brief but very intense rainfall events. And that is going to lead to a lot of flash flooding. And the question then is, are we adapting our roadworks program to compensate for that? And also, even in terms of when we do urban development and building homes, because a lot of homeowners, they don't want to be tasked with the responsibility of whether it's cutting the grass or trimming the hedge. So they may just concrete all around them because that is easier for them and it is low maintenance. But it also comes with an impact because all of the rain that would soak into the ground and be absorbed into the soil now makes its way into the roadway, into the causeway, then into the drainage system. So now we're seeing a problem with flooding across Barbados that we perhaps may not have seen the extent of it as we do now. So these are things that we have to think of holistically, connect the dots. And if there's one thing I would say about biosecurity, that's what we do. We try to connect the dots of seemingly disparate sectors and show the commonality or the common trend that is linked in between those sectors to then develop comprehensive solutions to tackle these.
So how are you doing that? Let me ask you this, Dr. Douglas. How are you doing that? Because for me, this is the first time I'm hearing about A, this department at the university, and B, what work you're doing. But that information can't just be collected in a report, sitting on a shelf, catching dust, or sent to a government ministry where it will sit on a desk, catch more dust before it gets down to the average citizen, and to educate and inform them the need for each and every citizen to take personal responsibility. Because that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about each citizen taking personal responsibility. So are you telling me that I need to dig up my driveway, which I pay so much money to get paved over, and now put down grass in order to absorb the water? Are you telling me that I need to completely reconsider how I build my home, how I maintain it? Should I now be putting in gutters to collect the water off the roof so that I have a tough tank outside the house and I'm collecting water? Because you're right, we're not connecting the dots. But I think it's also because we're hearing the information disparately from different people, and they're not all together connecting the dots. So I'm hearing you and I'm thinking one thing, but I'm hearing DEM and they're not telling me that, and I'm hearing the Home Affairs and they're saying something slightly different. So it's almost as though we're all speaking about the same issue but different elements of it. It's like a potluck supper. So you invite people over for food, and one body brings stew, another body brings chicken, another body brings rice and peas. But at the end, you still have a meal. But that meal happened because we had a conversation about who was going to bring the beef stew and who was bringing the tossed salad, not because everybody rolled up and they got 3 sets of beef stew.
No, I think what you're saying is quite correct. But what you're hinting at and getting at is communication.
Yes.
And being able to break down these silos, because every agency, every organization has their own remit, and everyone is focused on their particular task. And as I said, this is going to be a culture shift, and a culture shift is never easy. Behavioral change is never easy. It's never instantaneous. You don't get it right the first time, and it only gets better as you continue to dialogue, as you continue to communicate, and also become enlightened and aware of this. And what we're speaking to is really systems thinking. So when you think of systems, all of these systems interact, but you may be a specialist in one or maybe 2 different systems, but you don't know the impact of how, for instance, let's take one type of research we're currently doing is in welfares, and the link of welfares to, for instance, water scarcity and water demand on the island. To connect those 2 dots may seem on the outside looking in as being rather straightforward, but in actuality, when you have 2 agencies that are just looking at the immediate threats that they are responsible for, they're not really seeing that connection between the 2. And to you as perhaps someone, lay, you may see that obvious connection. And so it comes with, as I said, engagement, communication, and understanding how all of these things intersect, and then finding rational and comprehensive solutions for that.
Okay, Dr. Douglas, don't go away. We're going to take a break. Don't forget, you can share your comments and your questions in real time. You can call us at 228-5562 or 228-5563, or WhatsApp us at 228-5562, or make your comments on our Facebook page at CBC Barbados. We'll be back in just a minute. And welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Face It and Fix It. My guest today, Dr. Kirk Douglas. He's the director for the Center for Biosecurity Studies at the Capefield campus, UWI. And we're talking about the work of the center. And we started to talk about the conversations that we need to be having between different elements and agencies who also deal in these issues. Now, just before we went to break, we were talking about the areas of communication and making sure that regular average citizens understand that it really is about personal responsibility. We can no longer sit back and wait for the mythical government, because I don't think as a people we understand that we are part of the government to do everything for us. One of the things I wanted to look at is the impact of climate change on infectious diseases, because it seems to me as though we're moving from one disease to another, and I guess the preliminaries was when we had SARS and H1N1. Now we're at COVID-19, and we're barely managing COVID-19, and now we're at monkeypox. And before we get out of monkeypox, I'm hearing about something else. So is all of that related to climate change?
Yes, that's the short answer.
Your role was to say not really, and therefore allay my fears, not to tell me yes and frighten me further.
No, it's not to frighten you. It's to give you the plain truth. And the plain truth is yes, it is having an impact. Because when you think of the infectious diseases, there's something called a disease triangle. You have the host, which would be either animal or human. You have the environment, of which, obviously entails the climate. It entails whether they're vectors like mosquitoes or rodents, and then you also have the actual pathogen. So those are the three things. And any change in either of the three will change the infectious dynamics, either reducing or increasing it. So when you look at climate change, that's 1/3 of that triangle. And when you even think of changing climate is just not occurring on its own. You're going to have change in the other parts of the environment, such as like for mosquitoes. When temperatures increase, you get an increased rate of proliferation of mosquitoes. So they increase in terms of population size. So they breed faster. Their metabolic rate is increased. But then something happens also with us as a host in terms of humans. We change our behavior because when it gets warmer, we don't do the things that we would normally do if it's nice and cool, right? We would try to open our windows even if we didn't want to, because we don't want any mosquitoes coming. But it's so hot and it's so humid that we, give up all resistance and we just say, I need to get a break. And we open our windows and in comes the mosquito. And that's how you can get a change in one area that then filters into other areas.
Is this where we now see then the rise in things like dengue, and I remember chikungunya, which I had, which was horrible. So is this now because we're seeing this knock-on effect of warmer temperatures mean a rise in more insects which bring diseases with them or facilitate diseases? So if I need to open my windows because the whole house is not AC'd and I need some fresh air and I turn on a fan, do I also now need to be buying more insecticide, or do I need now to be looking at more plant-based insecticides? Because you can't be trying to kill the mosquitoes one way and then creating a different problem another way. So these two things are adding up. Are we supposed now to be looking at different types of insecticides?
I think the if you can and you have insect screens, that is perhaps a better fix. Mm-hmm. If you don't, then that brings with it a challenge of trying to stop the mosquitoes from coming into your personal space. So you can use obviously repellents. You can use the fan people usually turn on to try to quote unquote blow away the mosquitoes. But the truth is the mosquitoes can detect you chemically. So all of the carbon dioxide that you exhale, that is the chemical cue for the mosquito to find you. So even if you're underneath your sheet and you said you're hiding from the mosquito can still detect that you're there by the heat of your body and also the carbon dioxide that you emit. And then another thing is that with your skin bacteria, those bacteria actually convert your sweat into chemicals. And those chemicals can be attractive to mosquitoes. So if you can perhaps even take a shower, that can hopefully reduce your attractiveness to the actual mosquito. So these are just some things that you can do, but the mosquitoes are here. What you can also do around your property is to ensure that you keep it nice, clean, and tidy, and free from any containers that can allow water to pool in and then to breed mosquitoes. Also check your whether it be the grease traps or even your septic tanks as well, because they can also host not bacteria, they can host mosquitoes as well. So it's a comprehensive thing. There's not one solution or one fix, but it has to be comprehensive to be able to tackle these issues with climate change and infectious diseases. Then the question comes, okay, so we get an outbreak 1 year, we get a break for maybe 2-3 years, and then we get another outbreak. So what is really driving this? And as I would have mentioned at the top of the show, in terms of trade and tourism, so you have the flow of people and you have the flow of goods coming into a country or into the region like the Caribbean. And we have persons from all over the world that come in to the region to enjoy our beaches, to enjoy our hospitality. But with them, they can also bring, and they can also export, because there are a number of cases where people have actually gone back to their homes and they contracted dengue or even Zika within the Caribbean, and then when they go back to their homes, then they recognize that they're actually, having a bout of dengue or a bout of chikungunya or Zika. So the question is how can we be more proactive? How can we design models? How can we design risk models, more importantly, to kind of anticipate where the risk is going to occur and then put contingency plans in place to minimize the impact of that risk? Because when we do get dengue outbreaks, it is due to the fact that we have a new genotype of or new strain of dengue coming into the region, and that a lot of people do not necessarily have immunity towards, and then you get an outbreak because it's spread rapidly. You have a convergence of whether it be the right temperatures, the right situation with the mosquitoes, and then you get an amplification and then spread within the population. So it is multifaceted, but I think it's not outside of our reach. We can actually do it, but we have to be focused.
Is your center working closely with government in terms of modeling? Because you talked about the modeling, and I remember in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, I remember hearing the Prime Minister say that they'd worked with the university and the models were fairly scary in terms of what they were seeing if we didn't control COVID-19 and how it could get out of hand. So is the center working closely with government to be able to do the modeling that shows government, okay, this is where we are, but this is where we could be, so we need to either put systems in place to protect the citizenry or let the citizenry know so that they too can start to protect themselves?
Well, currently, no, but what we're doing at the moment is we have a team of UWI researchers who are looking to see how we can develop those models. Develop the model on tourism with Professor Troy Lord. He is the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences. Also with Dr. Peter Shamey. He is a statistician, and he will be very integral in terms of designing the types of risk models that we're going to have. And then we have Dr. Giroud, also from the university, who is a climatologist. And we're going to be working to see how we can develop those models. So the work is still preliminary at this stage. And the idea is to definitely work with government to be able to design these types of models, because when you think of the utility of having those risk models or those epidemiological models for COVID, it assisted with the preparation, and we anticipated what was going to occur before it happened, and we were the better for it. And what we're just saying is that let us not only do it for COVID, let us not stop there, let it fall short, and then have to dust it off and start all over again. Let us continue that good example and have it systematic throughout the public health sector, and to see how we can then improve health. Because the reality is climate change is here, it's not going anywhere, it's only going to get worse. And our healthcare systems have to be sustainable and they have to be adaptive. They have to be adaptive, or not we will be fragile and we won't be anti-fragile. And we need to then build resilience in that way so that we can head off threats before they mushroom into a real catastrophe.
You said something earlier. You said something earlier that really resonated with me, where you talked about the Caribbean region needing to really come together and understanding that we cannot fight these threats and impacts alone, that we need to fight them as a region. Why has that always seemed to be so difficult? Because I'm sure that we here in Barbados know that. I'm sure our friends in Jamaica know it. Our brothers and sisters in Trinidad know it. Or our brothers and sisters in Martinique know it. We all know it. So why has this always been seemed to be such a difficulty in terms of getting us to come together as a people and work together the way I see it happening in the EU and the Asia Pacific countries? Put a pin in it. We're going to take a break. But when we come back, you tell me how come. Stay with us. Dr. Douglas, just before we went to break, we were talking about the need for the CARICOM region to come together and work as one, as we've seen with the EU and as we've seen with the Asia Pacific countries, in order to be able to fight some of these threats and the impact that they'll have on us as a region. But yet we seem to talk about that a lot, but we're not seeing that happening. Maybe it's happening too slowly, or we're not seeing that happening as a region. So let me start in a place where I figured this at least should be working. Is this biosecurity studies something that's happening at least on the campuses of UWI, which are in 3 territories?
Well, this is the first and the only center of its kind in the entire Caribbean. We were established in 2019, and we've been going strong ever since, trying to build out the awareness, our outreach, so that we can sensitize the entire region towards this new view of that biosecurity, because this isn't actually the traditional view of biosecurity. The traditional view of biosecurity is quite different. It's mainly in the One Health realm, but we are also incorporating the political risk, the economic, the social, the technological, the ethical, and the legal aspects of it in combination with the One Health. So it is very new, it is very different, but we believe that it is going to definitely drive multi-disciplinary ways of tackling all of these issues. And a lot of them are very wicked problems, and we have to have a systematic approach to it, or not what we will do, as you quite rightly said, we will fix it here and then see it manifest as something else different. As it relates to the Caribbean unity, I think the COVID-19 pandemic, the very beginning of it, we saw what the potential could be because we acted as one in the region and we actually limited the impact that it could have had within the Caribbean. But it felt as though when the fear of the pandemic started to kind of ebb away, then we saw more of that nationalistic approach to whether it be border security or the movement of persons in and out of countries. So I'm hopeful that we can use that as a catalyst for regional unity in terms of how we approach different issues, because the reality is if something enters the Caribbean and Jamaica or Trinidad or even Barbados, it's only a matter of time before it spreads throughout the rest of the Caribbean. So we are only as strong as our weakest link. So we have to band together. We have to work together. That is the only way we're really going to achieve the type of biosecurity level of comfort we would believe that we definitely need in the Caribbean. So the hope is that we can definitely see, we definitely want to assist governments across the region. We don't exist as an entity to point fingers or to cast blame. What we do is to drive the awareness of the interrelatedness between issues. So rather than, and this is very important for smaller and developing states, such as within the region or Caribbean territories, because we don't necessarily have massive accounts or money to throw at problems. We usually have very limited resources. So what we're really advocating for is smarter spending. So rather than spending on 5 or 6 or 7 different issues, how about let's look at all of those issues together and see if there's perhaps one common solution that can have a domino effect and actually solve all of those problems, but for a fraction of the cost. And I think that is being effective, that is being smart, and I know that that's what Caribbean people are.
How can you involve the average citizen in A, the conversation about these issues, and B, understanding what their role is in terms of being able to fix some of these issues at a personal level? Because if every person started to fix it at a personal level, it would mushroom out and help to solve the problem. It may not solve all of it, but it would certainly reduce the amount of the problem because everybody is putting their plan to the wheel. So how are you getting this information out to make people aware, A, of the center, the work that you're doing, and the scope is extraordinarily broad. So where are you starting? What are you working on now? And how are you communicating that to the average citizen so that the average citizen says, you know what, let me start to check for myself?
Well, I think what we've been doing over the past 2 years, we have, in terms of our outreach, we have webinars that we will host from time to time based on the particular issues that we're looking to tackle. Illegal wildlife trade is one. Air pollution is a big issue. We're working with PAHO and WHO to sensitize the entire Caribbean on the issue of air pollution. And this will go into manufacturing, this will go into even as the householder level, not burning rubbish, and strongly advocating for legislative change where persons cannot burn refuse at their properties, because it is causing indelible harm to our citizenry across the Caribbean. And I think it's due to a lack of knowledge, because people don't know 7 million people die every year due to air pollution. That's more than the people that have died in the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's just 1 year due to air pollution. So it is incumbent upon us to communicate this. And you had asked, how are we going to do that? We need to understand first what the levels of knowledge are within the population. And that is through surveys. And that's one survey that we have at the moment in queue to actually administer nationally, because we think it is important to understand from Barbadians what is their perspectives on issues. Because sometimes we come with a bias that people don't know certain things. And so that is not the way to communicate. The way to communicate is to first find out, okay, let's have a conversation. What do you know? Okay, you know X, you know Y, but you perhaps don't know Z. So, okay, I like what you're saying. So you reinforce the positive behaviors, then you address the risky behaviors that are then potential or that are causing a problem. So it is all about risk communication, but risk communication can only occur when you understand your audience and the different segments and how you have to then communicate to them. And that's where I think media plays an important role, such as, you know, the television, radio, social media as well, because we would have seen during the pandemic the role that social media played, both good and unfortunately
And
bad as well.
misinformation. Let me stop you there because there's a saying that culture will eat strategy for breakfast. So yes, you're doing all these surveys, but are you factoring in the culture of not only Barbadians but Caribbean people? I'll go back to the thing you talked about, burning stuff. All of us grew up seeing people, neighbors, parents, whoever, burning stuff. That's our culture. So how are you factoring in the culture into these studies to be able to break away people from these cultural behaviors? Because behavioral change is difficult.
Very difficult, and I'm glad you understand that. But it doesn't mean it is insurmountable. So the problem is that it is there. So we can't hide our head in the sand. We have to, as you say, as the title of the show says, face it, and we have to fix it. Yeah. So I think that's how we actually have to operate.
Dr. Kirk Douglas, it was lovely talking to you. He's the director for the Center for Biosecurity Studies at the Cave Hill campus. I hope that we can chat again soon so that we can keep Barbadians knowledgeable and keep them educated as to not only what the center is doing, but how the work of the center affects you.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity as well. Take care and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
The same to you. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we talk about permaculture. What is it, and can you incorporate it into your farming in your backyard? Stay with us. And welcome back to Face It and Fix It. It was quite an interesting discussion there with Dr. Kirk Douglas, the director for the Center for Biosecurity Studies at UWI Cave Hill. Our next guests, Bernice Chase and Peter Chase, they're permaculturalists, and Graham Belle, the executive member of the Barbados Apiculture Association, and I hope I pronounced that right. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. Bernice, we girls got to stick together, so I'm going to start with you. What is permaculture?
Well, I would let my husband speak to that. But here at our farm, we've implemented a permaculture plan.
and came out from the course we did at the CDC back in 2015. So some of the terms that we would use, some people might not be familiar with, but here on the farm we have instituted a plan. We have a little bit of echoing. Okay, so we have done our earthworks, and he was.
And so you will hear terms like swales and berms and that sort of thing. All right, so for now, let him talk a bit more about that.
Into permaculture.
Was very interesting from the conversation that Dr. Douglas was having with you.
Mm-hmm.
Permaculture fits perfectly into what he was speaking about, right? Generally, people see permaculture, when we speak about permaculture, people think that it is simply a food production methodology, right? What permaculture really is a systems development methodology. So, which has been used for producing food, right? I would really like to go down the road that Dr. Douglas was going down. We can come back to
Agreed.
the food production, the backyard food production that I heard you speaking about, which is incredibly important in Barbados right now because, wait, I've lost you.
Oh dear.
No?
No,
Okay.
there you are. We're good there. Yeah, we're good there.
I'm good there? Okay.
You're good there.
I'm just not seeing your beautiful face, so. Right now, food production in backyards in Barbados is very important for us to have food sustainability, right? To reduce the cost to the consumer, you know, for their food. That's without a doubt, that is incredibly important, right? But all the things that I heard Dr. Douglas talking about, where you were talking about the supply chain, the brittleness of the global supply chain, the intensive rain problems that we're having in Barbados, yet we keep talking about Barbados as a water scarce nation. I got some points here written down. Things about connecting the dots, where you were speaking about having specialists who have understandings, but they don't connect together to see the whole system, right? He was also talking about throwing massive amounts of money at problems and
that we
not
don't
getting
have
any
it.
solutions.
But not only that, that we don't have it.
And
As
that we don't have.
small developing countries,
Right.
we don't have it.
We don't have money. We don't have those money. And in any case, when you can fix any problem with money. You can throw enough money at a problem and fix that problem. But that does not mean that the fix is sustainable or moral or any
Or
of those
permanent.
things, right? Ethical, any of those things. So really and truly, the permaculturalist is the generalist in the equation. He is able to see, he's able to get up above the system and see the system in its totality, how the disparate parts of the system connect, how each part, what each part needs in order to be productive, and how each part can benefit other parts so that the system is sustainable, takes care of the earth, takes care of people, and allows a fair share of yield for everyone.
How did y'all get
Right?
into
So
permaculture?
that is really what permaculture is about. Those three principles: care for the earth, care for people, fair share for everyone.
What I'm really
Right?
interested in
And-
is how did you get into it? How did you get into permaculture? Were you always into farming, and this is just
I was always into
different
farming, but
element
I was
of it?
never into
into permaculture?
I was never into permaculture. I can't hear you.
No, go on. I was asking how did you get into it? If you were always into farming, and you did answer that question and say yes, you've always been into farming, but you weren't
Yeah,
into
I was never into
permaculture.
permaculture. My wife is the person who is the. I'm very much a very isolated type of person. My wife is not. I can't hear you again.
No, so she's the one that introduced you to permaculture.
She's the one that got the permaculture connection. She knows 1 million people. I know about 5. So she was able to, through her connections with the, what was the name of the Future Center Trust?
Trust, yes.
Get us onto the permaculture course, and it went from there. Actually, I was not interested, and as usual, she dragged me down there, and it went from there. She does that all the time. all the time, continuously.
Continuously?
I should know better by now.
Bernice,
to continue.
Go ahead.
What Dr. Douglas was talking about is very, very interesting to me. They are, what he's talking about is a bunch of specialists knowing their area, but not seeing the system and not being able to connect the system points together in a sustainable way, which meets these 3 permaculture mandates. Right? Care for the earth, care for people, fair share. I'm going to keep repeating that continuously. Around those then are other points that speak to those 3 main areas. One of the main principles of permaculture is do no harm. So observation first. Right? In order to understand a problem, understand an area that you want to develop, understand anything, you do not want to run in there and start throwing about money willy-nilly. You want to observe continuous. What they say in permaculture is 100 hours of observation, 100 hours of planning, 2 hours of work.
Let me ask you
Right,
this,
that
Mr. Chase. One of the things I want to know, and I want Bernice to come in here as well. Let me start with Bernice, actually. Bernice, why did you decide to get into to drag him? And I'm using Peter's words to drag Peter to the permaculture class.
Well, I had like farming as well. I came from an HR background, but I saw that, my husband needed help on the farm. And when I
heard about permaculture, I was actually introduced to it by a young lady called Lani Ejo. And when I went to the first meeting, I said to myself, but that is how we really should be doing agriculture. Okay? So for me, it was a matter of having healthier food, having nutrient dense, produce, using less pesticides, having as natural as possible the foods that we eat. You want to live healthy. And so the direction that we were going at that time was not, to me, the right way. Because really and truly, if you're talking about sustainability, you can't be talking about sustainability and using a lot of pesticides that are going to kill you. So you're going to try to do your best to ease away, get away from using the pesticides, and because that's the transition that we would have had to take. So we're still in that transitioning from that traditional way of growing our foods to a more natural way of growing the foods. And really and truly, years ago, that's how the farmers did. They didn't have the man-made pesticides. They knew from observation as well what to do and what not to do. So for me, that's how I believe that we in Barbados, I mean, we're a small island. Right now, there's an island, I think it's called the Isle of Man, that's completely permacultured. Completely permacultured. And our island is small. I believe that we can get to that stage where we lessen the use of pesticides to more natural pesticides. I let Peter talk some more.
Peter, what was the impact of using permaculture? What was the impact of using the concept of permaculture on your farming? Because you've always been in farming, but then you decide to use this new method. What was the impact?
Well, we have not gained those benefits as of yet.
Okay.
One thing you have to understand, when you're switching a production method, the switch comes with many problems. The traditional production method for food has its benefits. Okay? They're easy. When you go when you go to Carter's or wherever, you buy say a bag of fertilizer. The fertilizer has on the bag exactly what percentage of potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus is included in that product. When you go on pesticide, you know exactly what is going to happen when you use the. You're gone again. No, I'm gone.
All right, tell you what, Peter, let me take a commercial break, and by then you'll sort out your screen, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Right, okay.
I'm really come quick.
And we're back. Just before we went to break, we were talking to Peter and Bernice Chase about permaculture and how they're transitioning their farm to permaculture-based agriculture. But I want to go over to Graham Belle, who's the executive member of the Barbados Apiculture Association. Graham, I hope I pronounced that right. Let's talk about apiculture. I don't think a lot of Barbadians realize how important that is to our food production. I know it quite by accident because my neighbor called one day and said that she saw a whole swarm of bees flying into a small hole on the outside of my house. So I had to call an apiarist to come and take them out. And by the time he came out, I was amazed to see that I had a whole honeycomb. A honeycomb under the eaves of the house. And so I had 2 sets of bees that I didn't even know about. So talk to me, how important are bees to agriculture and their ability to pollinate plants and flowers?
Hi, good morning, Joel. Good morning, Barbados. Thank you for having me on the program. As I said, as you mentioned, I am a member of the Apiculture Association, and our mission really is to promote and develop the investment of Barbadians in the apicultural industry, which is just a fancy word for beekeeping. And to answer your question directly, bees are very important for not just Barbados, but all across. They're responsible for pollinating 2/3 of the crops that are responsible in foods for human consumption. Plants that would include seeds, nuts, fruits, and vegetables, stuff that we eat daily. So it's very important to protect bees and all pollinators, really.
Recently, a few years ago, and I think there's still some studies going into it, we noticed that a lot of bees were dying off. And scientists were very concerned because, as you said, they do pollinate a lot of our plants and flowers and are very critical to food production. So do we know yet why the bees were dying off?
There are several factors. I could speak to locally where we have seen the use of pesticides and what's not in our agriculture. So the conversation that you were having earlier with
Dr.
Bernice
Douglas,
and
yeah.
Peter Chase is very important. And with Dr. Douglas about the use of more sustainable methods of agriculture is very important. So yes, pesticides are one of the reasons we've been seeing, one of the major reasons really, we've been seeing a decline in the number of bees.
I've noticed now that several schools are starting their own beekeeping, almost like little communities. So you see everybody in the white suit and the headgear and these small little huts, cultivating bees. Is this what we want, that we start our children at a very young age to understand the importance of beekeeping and to be able to generate more bees so that there are more of them in the atmosphere and that therefore they can assist us in food production?
Yes, so that is the aim of the association and the aim of the ministry. We have been making an effort to reach out to the younger demographics to get them involved in the protection of the environment and the getting them generally involved in apiculture. We have started a project with the UNDP. I'm getting a bit of background
Feedback?
noise. I'm not sure if the technical team can yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
So we have started a project with the UNDP. It's reaching its completion phases now, actually, where we're doing a lot of outreach. And one of the target groups that we're doing is actually nurseries. So you spoke about young children, but we're actually targeting nurseries. We did a presentation last week, and we are set to do another presentation at the nursery just to inform them about bees. People have the idea that bees are dangerous insects, but they're only dangerous if you approach them in a manner that would startle them. You would have seen on World Bee Day, actually, the front page of the Nation newspaper, where there was a gentleman who was handling bees without a suit. and is not foreign to us in the Apiculture Association, and to beekeepers to operate without suits at certain times during the stage of bee movement. There's a stage called swarming where they're not very aggressive and they can be approached. So we just need to get that message out there that it's just dependent on how you approach bees and hives that can make them aggressive, and just generally we need to approach the perception of bees differently.
Now, we also know about the medicinal properties of honey. So when I go to craft markets and farmers markets, I see a lot of people selling raw honey and honeycomb. Let's talk a little bit about that. Are we looking now to develop wild local honey in areas where we can offer it as an alternative medicinally in some areas?
Yes, we are locally. That's also one of the targets of the project, to develop a bigger market for the consumption of local honey. We all know, or if you don't know, you would know today, honey has proven to have antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, antifungal properties. Persons use it when for their allergies, and it's widely known that if you suffer from certain allergies, you use the local honey from that area to fight those allergies. If you speak to beekeepers, you would often find that their local market is usually persons who want it for those general health benefits, but persons who want to fight those allergies, those symptoms of caused by the pollen in the air, because the bees would collect the pollen from the same plants that tend to affect them, make the honey from it, and it would counteract the effects of those pollens on the person.
Well, that's good to know, Graham. With my allergies, I guess I will be calling you now to find out where I can get some honey from in my area in St. George. What are some of the other things you want to tell us, and how can we encourage people to A, cultivate more bees, and B, join the association?
Well, let me answer your second question first. You could contact myself or any of the other beekeepers to get your honey through the Apiculture Association's website, which is apiculturebarbados.com, apiculturebarbados.org, apiculturebarbados.org, and there's a list of beekeepers there that you can, if you want honey, if you want bee removal services, if you just want to know generally about bees and the Apiculture Association in Barbados. We have a blog there that we update with articles, and we have general information about apiculture or beekeeping in Barbados.
To permaculture, are you?
Oh, well, as I was saying, we are starting to see benefits, but the change anytime you change methods, you run into you don't understand that all those sort of things. So we're now starting we're now in the periphery of seeing some benefits. Getting to your point about bees, we're definitely we're a member of the Beekeeping Association. We're increased or hive production, but bees are a definite benefit to our business model. We have a number of products that we're interested in for producing, which will come from the bee production. As an example of the connectivity that we were speaking about, we have a piece of land that the government has generously allowed us to use in Turner's Hallwood, and one of the, well, not one, the main production model down there is going to be bees with their connection to plants in Barbados. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you, Graham. So you're going to
Right.
use this land, and that's going to be your model at this particular spot.
Right. The medicinal plants have a definite benefit for Barbados, and we're doing this in conjunction with Dr. Sonia Peter. There are a number of benefits that we can gain from medicinal plants, teas, using medicinal teas and that sort of thing. A lot of those medicinal plants are indigenous plants to Barbados. They're therefore weather tolerant. We don't have to do a lot of work to maintain them and that sort of thing. Bees need feed. A lot of those plants are flowering plants, which the bees will, so among those two production, the bees will, so among those two production areas, we're then going to flesh out a plan, a permaculture plan, which will benefit the medicinal
And we're welcome back. We're talking to Bernice and Peter Chase, who are permaculturalists. They've transitioned their farm from normal, regular farming methods to permaculture, and Graham Belle, who's the executive member of the Barbados Apiculture Association. One of the things I was asking you, Peter, before we went to break is, how is permaculture different from organic farming? Or are the two of them, as the Barbadians say, much of a muchness?
Much of a muchness. Permaculture would be the overarching system of organic farming.
Okay. What are some of the challenges you face from trying to transition to a permaculture method?
One of the main challenges is understanding things that the traditional farmer doesn't really have to take into account. As things like fertilizer or pesticides, fungicides, things like that, they are really be able to do is read the label. As a permaculturalist, if you want to get into the organic farming part of it, you have to be able to, because those things meet a need, right? So you have got to be able to come up with ways of meeting those needs on your own, and you don't have the lab of the company backing you. So as an example, if I want to transition from granular fertilizer to manures and other ways of adding nutrients to the soil or to the plants, I have now to understand what exactly is the chemical makeup of chicken manure, or what is the pesticide fighting properties of XYZ plant. And as my wife says, neem as an example. And I have to understand what percentages and quantities of those things and how to use them. So now that is all at me. And that is, if you flesh that argument out to its entirety across the board, you now have to take on a number of learning curves in order to come to a solution.
Peter, is there
Whereas
a
before,
permaculture? Is there a permaculture association where you can discuss some of the challenges you are having with other permaculturists, and they too can assist you in finding solutions?
yes, of course, well, of course, across the internet.
Let me pull back in, Bernice.
I only heard
Go
part
ahead.
of that.
Let me pull back in, Bernice here.
Um,
Bernice, I understand you make a lot of teas and you're doing different things. So talk to me about these different teas that you're making.
Well, I'm using tree leaves. So teas from our trees. Because these are very, I would say, healthy for us. So we can use even the mango leaves, soursop, guavas, all those teas, and a lot more berry. And a lot of these teas are coming out on the market just now. We already have the lemongrass and so on. But there are probably over 30 something different teas that are coming out. Teas, now that we have COVID, and we have the transportation, getting things into the island for ourselves, right? I believe that we should be looking inward. We should be looking home to producing and developing our own products. So we can try to see how we can replace the imports. And actually, we're actually trying to, the government, Barbados, the whole Caribbean region, we are looking at reducing our import bill. And long before COVID, we envisaged this happening where if the ships got to stop, planes got to stop, what are we going to do? So we need to utilize what we have. And we also have to stop thinking that what we have is not as good as what is imported. Because in a lot of the cases, a lot we have is better than what is imported. Okay,
but Barbados very much depends upon tourism. So if a tourist comes to Barbados and their morning brew with Thai food, do you think that these teas are tasty enough and offer enough benefits that you can convince the tourist to let go of the Thai food and drink soursop leaf tea? Tourists to let go of the Thai food and drink soursop leaf tea?
I don't have to convince them. I used to do tours for Atlantis. There's a tour called the Natural Wonders Tour. And I can tell you 95 to 99% of the tourists want to sample a Barbadian product. They want to drink the Barbadian tea. When they come, a lot of them told me, we don't really want the continental breakfast. So sometimes they leave the hotel and go somewhere, and they used to want to come at my house to eat and drink and to stop at shops and eat and drink and sample what is the Barbadian fare. Right? So tourists is coming here for a different experience, and sometimes invariably we're giving them their own experience that they had back home. They're not looking for that. They want different foods. They want to sample different foods. They love oysters. They want the oysters fish. They want that sort of atmosphere, that sort of ambience as well. And right now, a lot of them right now want to come and camp in Barbados.
Glamping. That sounds interesting.
And hike. Yeah, glamping. They want to do that. You understand? Because they want that different experience. And we need to be able to provide that experience. When they come here, they want a bright football. They want to eat flying fish.
I get you.
So we have to be able to be in that position to give them what they want. But
in the last few minutes we have before we go, I want to rope back in Graham here. Graham, what are some of the challenges that your beekeepers are having on island, and how are you working with farmers to get them to understand the importance of setting up a bee colony within their farm that would assist in being able to pollinate some of the plants and food crops that they're growing, and be able to help them to see the importance of having bees as part of their farming culture?
Thanks, Joel. As I mentioned earlier, one of the challenges that we have been facing is the use of pesticides, where you find that the bees will come back to the hive having consumed the pesticide or touch plants that have the pesticide, and it affects the hive, it affects the population in the hive, and could oftentimes lead to the death of the entire hive. And that also restricts us in our ability to share our hives with certain farmers, because all across the world, other beekeepers are able to transport their hives from one area to the next to rent out the hives to allow for those bees to pollinate uh, mass areas of agricultural land. And once that season is finished, they're able to move those bees to another area. Obviously, they would have greater land mass, but we don't have the opportunity to do that because some of our farmers are still using pesticides. Others we are able to accommodate, and we would love to do. We would love to do it, and we gladly do it. But some we aren't able to do it. One of the other things I wanted to mention is that, as I said, we have entered into a project with the UNDP, and out of that we are setting up some demonstration hive locations across the island. So pretty soon, the average Barbadian will be able to come and do some tours of hives, get to experience and allow us to share the knowledge about bees and apiculture in Barbados, because one of the other challenges, I think I alluded to it earlier, is that persons have the perception that bees are dangerous, they're a pest, they need to get rid of them, when oftentimes these are the same bees that are pollinating their back gardens, their flowering plants in their front yard, and their beautiful garden areas, and they need the bees in order for those plants and their gardens to thrive. So sometimes people don't make the connection. And as you were saying with Dr. Douglas, that conversation has to be had so that we can make the connection between all of these things, so that persons understand that these systems are not working in isolation. They need to intertwine and connect and allow everything to work smoothly.
Well, Graham, I want to thank you very much. When you're doing those bee tours, please give me a call, because we at CBC here, we want to always be part of these conversations and make sure that we expose our audience to these projects. So please, when you're doing these bee tours, call me. We're going to come with a camera and do a bee tour.
We have a small demonstration hive that has a little glass window, and we would gladly bring that to the studio and allow you all to see it live. We had it
Thank
at
you.
Agrofest, and it was
At
a very big
Agrofest,
hit.
I can imagine. Thank you very much, Graham. You and I are going to have a separate conversation offline. Let me get some of this honey for my allergies. Peter and Bernice, thank you. It has been a pleasure chatting with you about permaculture. Bernice, I'll be calling you regarding teas. And Peter, you and I are going to have a different conversation about honey mead.
Yes, Peter need to speak to Graham.
Thank you very much. That's Bernice Chase and her husband Peter Chase, they're permaculturalists, and Graham Belle, executive member of the Barbados Apiculture Association, telling us all about the opportunities to improve our food crops by using different methods. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, art is on the menu. Stay with us. Fix It, one of my favorite people, Oneka Small, a visual artist and curator, a woman who has single-handedly shown us that you do not need a fancy gallery to curate art. You can curate it in just about any possible space. In the celebrations for the 50th anniversary of independence, If you missed the exhibition, we pledge allegiance. You have missed half your life. It was fascinating to all. Oneka, it's been too long. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I am good. Let's talk a little bit about you, because Oneka is a very shy and humble person. She doesn't like to talk about herself. She is a highly respected Barbadian visual artist. She studied at the University of Lincoln and the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. She's a multimedia, multidisciplinary artist and curator, and her work hangs in several exhibitions, and she's curated many art shows. Let's talk a little bit about your style. What's your style?
I'm a little off guard, but that's okay. Okay, so my style, I'll step away.
So this is one of your pieces right here?
Yeah, we are hanging a show at the Argentine Embassy.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Hunt and Gather. It's myself, Adrian Burnett, and Lyle Warner. So we have foraged pieces in the environment, it's our environment work, and then we have created works of art around them.
Tell us about the importance of being able to find spaces to hang art, because we don't have a national gallery. It's in the works, but we really don't have a lot of galleries, a lot of traditional gallery spaces. So talk to me about finding spaces to hang work, curate exhibitions, and the spaces where you've done it.
Okay, so one of the most important things I think for visual artists in Barbados to achieve sustained prosperity is for us to have opportunities. So as you said, with We Pledge Allegiance, we popped up in the Manor complex, which was donated by Adrian Elcott and his family. Since then, we have been using a model where we pop up in different locations and take art to people in Barbados who wouldn't normally go to a gallery space. The Argentine Embassy has become our home. Ambassador Gustavo was very instrumental in making it a space for Barbadian artists, and that has continued. So this show is being hosted here as well, even though he's back in Argentina. And we have popped up in churches. St. George Parish Church supports us, along with supermarkets. Norman Center is one of our sponsors, and they support us and host us. We have another exhibition happening there in July. So we have been popping up in different locations that are not your traditional gallery spaces, and it's been very successful.
That leads me to my next question, the importance of having these exhibitions in highly trafficked areas, but that are non-traditional. Do you find, like, I remember you had a wonderful exhibition in Norman Center. Did a lot of people pass through because it was a trafficked area? There was a store selling furniture at the front, so people had to come through the building. So did you find that people expressed an interest in art because it was in the space where they were?
Definitely. One of the things that's our mandate really and truly is to bring art to Barbadian people and make it affordable for the Barbadian public. It's not just those who feel that they have long pockets or that they have all this extra income. So in Norman Center, what we do is we sell work where necessary under terms. So the same way you could buy your furniture, your appliances, people are able to come in and pay towards their artwork. And we did that in Norman Center, and people would pass. There was one lady, I always say that she's like a shining example. She came, she saw a piece by Fred Odell, she fell in love with it. I think it took her maybe, and this is no indication for her, but it took her maybe a couple years to pay for the piece. But she saw it, and she constantly put down a little bit towards it, and eventually got the piece. And this is not, we would say, somebody with the greatest level of disposable income. So she really saw something as she passed through the mall in town, maybe going to catch the bus, that she loved, and she purchased. So we all have the ability to purchase work if it is something in our heart.
One of the things we don't see a lot of are prints. I know in other markets that are more developed art-wise, you can always, if you can't afford the original, you can buy a print. I know that from even Jamaica. what are we doing to develop a culture of having prints? It always breaks my heart when I go into some department stores and see other people's art and prints hanging on the wall for sale, but I don't see my local artists, their work hanging on the wall for sale. So what's the hold up in terms of print? Is it that we don't have a facility that can do the printing, or the artists don't want their work as prints? What is it?
Again, as Artists Alliance, we annually, except for during the pandemic, we used to do something called the print, which was specifically geared towards enabling people to own a print. So we would ask the artists to hang an original work along with reproductions of those works. So because we found a lot of the times people come into a gallery and they'll see a piece of work, it might be $2,000, but you could get a print for 100 or 50. So they would go for the print. So we have been doing that, and we've been trying to enable that. I believe there's another company as well which started during the pandemic, where they actually are printing on demand and shipping overseas. And they had enabled quite a few artists, and the NCF, the National Cultural Foundation, had assisted with this project, where I believe they had sponsored a couple of these artists. The name escapes me of the actual website, but I can find that and share that later. So there's some strides being made in terms of creating more prints. And we also, as I said, have a show coming up in July called Waves of Color, which is based on the same idea of the print, where people are bringing their work and reproduction so that you get a wide range of price points that you can buy your art, and Barbadian imagery and artists.
You mentioned the shop that opened up during COVID. How has COVID been on the visual artists? Because I know with performance artists, there were a couple events put on to generate opportunities for them to work. What about the visual artists?
Yeah, so I have to say the NCF and the government was really good in terms of supporting visual artists and creatives on a whole with their COVID-19 grants. So they really came out and they encouraged people to do things that would have used the technologies so that we would actually be able to enter people's homes. So I was one of those recipients in an installation in Norman Center. So I believe there's one person who always said you shouldn't let a good crisis go to waste. And for some artists, the crisis has pushed us to reimagine our work, or to put it in different spaces, or to approach things differently. We didn't have our normal gallery spaces because, as everybody else, things were closed. So we had to look for different ways of doing things. And I think for some it worked, for some it didn't. A lot of our artists still are very dependent on the touristry. And during the lockdown, we know we weren't having tours. So we suffered along with everybody else within the industry. I believe that artists must be the most resilient human beings in Barbados. So we know how to cut and contrive, how to live frugally, and how to make the best with what we're given. So I believe depending on your orientation or your outlook, it has its positives and its negatives.
What are some of the challenges you see that affect the community that you think are not being addressed?
Okay, so one of the we have a state of emergency right now within our ceramic industry. I believe on Wednesday, Belle, who is one of our stalwarts within the industry, he passed away. He was one of the main processing places for clay, and he had stopped. And there has been a lot of challenges with ceramic artists being able to access clay in Chalky Mount. I think I stand corrected, but I believe of my last conversation that there was no longer any Bajan clay being processed.
Because I saw something with Juliana Innes saying that there was an emergency in terms of there wasn't the local clay available to allow them to do the work that they do.
Correct. And if you've been to any school in Barbados and you've done any art program at any age, your hand touches clay. So your hand would have touched some clay that was processed by Mr. Belle. So I know that the CEO of the NCF, Carol Roberts-Reefer, had been working with, I believe it was John King at that point in time, to find a quick solution. But these things sometimes tend to be complex because where we get the clay from in Chalky Mount, a lot of that land is now being used for homes and different things. So we really, I believe the issue is securing a space to dig and then being able to enable some other person to be able to process that clay so that we will have it. So there is that emergency. So the further thing I would say that's missing, and you touched on it before, is that we don't have a national art gallery, and that is a major crisis and state of emergency. I know we're working towards it. I sit on the board of the National Art Gallery, so I know we're working we're working towards it. It's not going as quickly as we would like because everything is strapped to cash. And I think the major or the crux of the issue is the level of importance that is put on the visual arts in particular. As I said, I'm now working with the NCF doing some work in Queen's Park, but pandemic, we know it's closed to do national duty as a vaccination center, and then it became a tax clinic. And I make the joke with people that they didn't close the central bank to make it a vaccination center. So we know where our priorities lie. So we need to change our orientation and know that art is supremely important, especially during the pandemic when we were all at home. I scroll through exhibitions in Barbados. I scroll through exhibitions internationally. I was soothed by music, so the creatives really have to be given a push up in terms of respect and where we sit, so that we are then enabled with a national art gallery, with more spaces, with more opportunities, and with that, more sustained living.
One of the things that has always concerned me, like you said, is we talk a lot about the cultural industries being an economic plank, but I sometimes wonder if we think that it is going to develop itself, and you're quite right. For many years, I've been hearing about the National Art Gallery, but I cannot begin to imagine what is the problem other than, as you said, cash. In order to develop that gallery, somebody to manage it. We've seen galleries pop up and pop out, because remember when Teresa Hatchety had her gallery on Haigh Street, and then that died due to lack of support. And there's only so many paintings at $2,000 and $3,000 that you can sell to keep your business open. And we're not suggesting for a nanosecond that artists should reduce the cost of their work, but it is still very much a high-end product. But by the same token, we can't live without art in our lives. You're right. When we were all cooped up at home during the pandemic, we were watching movies and listening to music and listening to verses and at the stay-at-home party, and all of those things are artistic endeavors. Right. Your thoughts on a national school of the arts? Or do you think how it is done now, where you can learn something at Earl Barrow Center and you can learn something at Barbados Community College, is the way to go, where the opportunities to learn or be educated in art are separated in different spaces?
I think all of the programs that are now existing are, 2 weeks ago, I believe I went to the portfolio exhibition at Community College for their degree and associate degree programs, and the work was fantastic. I believe what we need maybe is a transition space. So I know it always sounds kind of crazy when I tell people, I think the same way that you have the CEO employed and the chief financial officer employed and the maid and the grounds person employed in government organizations, we need to employ an artist. Like, artists and creative need to become job titles within every organization, because we're not just looking at art, I think, in terms of creating paintings that go on. We're looking at how we can approach our lives more creatively, and who better to help us than artists. We need to create jobs that seem that are not necessarily what we consider run-of-the-mill, but so, like I was saying, even within the Defense Force, where you have the PT officer, why is there not an artist position at the Defense Force that's capturing different types of defense or military things that are happening in Barbados in 2022? Even if that artist uses photography and is not necessarily sitting and painting. I think we need to have studios, so the government can maybe invest in studio spaces for those same artists that are coming out of community college, who could then be supported to create that work that can then be sold overseas. We have examples of young artists such as Akila Watts going overseas, and we have examples of older artists like
Yep.
Akem, who's
Mm-hmm.
a residency, I believe, in Scotland. So there are avenues for the work, because when we open shows, her mother said, Kili sell out. So she's creating work in New York, and that work is being sold. There's no reason why our artists can't be creating work in Barbados and that work being sold all over the world. But we need investment like anything else. A lot of the times I look at, you go into a government office and this sounds bad, and I'm like, this person is getting a salary and I'm not. And I work really hard. So why can't our government really invest in the industries by setting up these studios, paying the artists a salary, having them produce, and then using the fruits of their labor to enrich the country? These are things that can happen, but we also have to prioritize where we put the artists and where we put the creators.
Do we also need programs on art appreciation? I remember a while ago the Barbados Community College was doing one. I rushed up and paid for it, and then as usual, there's a set number that must be able to make it financially viable. They didn't reach that set number, so they never had it, and they gave me my money back. I am still the poorer for not having been able to attend that art appreciation program. So is that something that we can start to look at so that more Barbadians understand the importance of art in their lives and understand that they may not think they're experiencing art, but they are. Maybe in different ways, but they're experiencing art in their lives, and this is how it needs to be supported.
I agree. Well, I believe it was you that used to do one of those fantastic programs. Was it not called Eye on the Arts?
Eye on the Arts. I still regret having had to stop. I still regret having had to stop.
I feel that at this point we need back an eye on the arts. Art appreciation is definitely one of the major foundations for us building an economy that supports artists or even supports the pursuit of art. Yep. So my son is 15, but I would take him to every gallery opening. So now I always say he's probably not going to be an artist, but at least whenever he is whatever he is going to be, that he will go to the art galleries and buy art, because we have opened our children to seeing art, to experiencing art, and to understanding the processes behind the creation of the art, so that when they see a price, they don't go, oh, you know what I mean? Like they say, well, you know what? I know how much hard work went into that. My visual interaction might only be a couple seconds, but I know that person has been working on that for months, years, weeks, or whatever. So it's worth it. And a lot of the problems we have are trying to bring people's minds to the fact that what they see on the wall is worth it. Because sometimes what you see on the wall on a painting could be somebody's salary or somebody's salaries, So we have to understand that, and art appreciation is important. I think it needs to be part of the curriculum for every school, but also where we can go to offices where we have popped up in different locations. People pass by and they come in and they talk to us about the art. They talk to us about what they like. I always tell people Barbadians are some of the most art-loving people in the world. We're not big, but we will look at art. We have beautiful things in our home. That when we decorate at Christmas time, I see people buying, not necessarily Barbadian, as you said, they go in the stores and they buy prints because they're at their price point. But we appreciate. It's now to appreciate and put our backing towards that appreciation.
How can we get our artists into merchandising some of their stuff? So sometimes you go, like I was in New York a few years ago and I went to the Museum of Modern Art and I could buy a mug with like an Oneka small print branded on it, or I could buy a tote bag, or I could buy coasters or whatever that are part of the artist's repertoire of work. So it's not just the painting hanging on the wall or the pottery or whatever. There are also elements of it that are merchandise that I can buy and take home a piece. So where are we with that, and is that doable? I know Grove Gallery at Lime Grove has a small space then next to it where you can buy different elements, key rings and bags and stuff from different artists. But do we need to take that to another level where we can see it with more artists rather than just a few?
Yeah, I think I always tell people, I'm an artist, so I know how hard it is just to get the painting on the wall, right?
And to get the acrylic paint and
You
the
now
easel
have your
and the
resource.
canvas. I know.
Exactly. So you go into Art Hub, and I told the lady at Art Hub, I believe on Monday when I went to get some paint, I said I would love the time to come where I don't have to do any gymnastics to figure out how to buy 2 tubes of paint and a paintbrush. So we're still doing this mental gymnastics. So a print now is another step where you have to invest money to do these reproductions. And sometimes we do the reproductions and they don't sell. So you now have stock caught up somewhere. And we don't necessarily have the cash flow to be able to have a stock of mugs or a stock of print point. And that's why I think um, Derek, name of the person who print on demand, which is a good idea. We can have the original image and paid for without us having to have those expenses. So we need more programs like that, but we also need more people who are using to buy it. So I say even the hotels, when we have conferences and people are coming and we want to give them gifts, make sure we put in a print or put in a mug with a print from Tracy the Oliver Greenwich or something in there so that the income is guaranteed as opposed to come and set up and hopefully somebody will see your work and they will hopefully like your work and they will hopefully buy it. No, let's guarantee some income for the artist by saying we want 100 of these prints and we're paying you for 100 and these will be given all of our delegates. So it has to be more inclusive of the government or even just the institution or whoever is doing it. A friend of mine said, Adrian, the government is one of the greatest procurers of supplies in Barbados. If we could get government to just keep buying supplies from artists, it would really help. It would help.
In the last few minutes that we have, Oneka, tell us a little bit about this exhibition that's hanging behind you, where it's going to be, when I can come and see it, how we can talk, and you can give me one, I can get one on higher purchase. Talk to me.
Okay, so the exhibition is called Hunt and Gather. It's featuring 3 artists, Adrian Burnett, myself, and Lyle Warner.
Is this piece right here on my screen, this piece on my screen with the tree of life and the roots, that's you?
That is mine, correct.
I knew it.
That is not in the show. That has already been sold. A dear supporter has that one.
Then we need to have this conversation about the print.
Exactly. This is what happens. So like quite a few of the pieces are sold, and then people will ask me, and then it's a matter of a process of then getting the print. And sometimes people want the original, like you want the old, but you can't all have the originals. Sometimes artists are prints as well because in their minds, not that piece, they want to feel as though they have the one and only. But I always tell people, look at the Mona, they produce so many times. The more you valuable the original becomes, So we have a mix of, Lyle is a photographer and he has photos, so he has prints. Adrian Burnett is all around creative, so he has been doing stuff with bound materials as well, but making, like there's one piece I'm totally in love with called How Now Brown Cow. So it's very creative use of different materials that he has found. So it plays on the idea that we are using what we have been able to hunt and gather to make it better and to create products and images of value. The show opens on Saturday at 5:30 at the Argentine Embassy, and then it's open until July 29th by appointment because it's still the embassy, so you have to call and find out if you can come, but it generally works out pretty good.
Okay. Well, Oneka, I really want to thank you. Final question before we wrap up. Any ideas, any solutions, any advice for upcoming artists? Some little person has gone to the exhibition and sees it and says to their mommy, I want to be an artist. And their mother says, you need to find a real job. Your thoughts and advice for upcoming artists?
I am so happy to say that I have been encountering more and more mummies that when their children tell them that they want to be an artist, they say, yeah, go for it. and they have been supporting their dreams and their visions. So I'm saying maybe they're not enough that are saying it, but a lot more are saying it. I would tell any artist that it is not for the faint-hearted. You have to stick to it. It takes a level of resilience. It takes a level of push, and it's everyday process of moving forward. In my world, I tell people it's a feast and famine reality. So in the feast, I give thanks. In famine, I give thanks, but I keep knowing that we keep moving forward.
Okay. Oneka Small, thank you so much. Don't forget that the exhibition is opening this Saturday. It is on at the, where did you say it was again? The exhibition?
Argentine Embassy.
It's on at the Argentine Embassy. The opening is this Saturday.
So I tell people obliquely opposite Savannah Hotel.
There you go. And when you get there, remember, the opening is this Saturday, but if you can't make this Saturday, you have to call and make an appointment because it is indeed a working space. Oneka Small, thank you very much for chatting with us about the life of an artist and what's available. Bernice Chase and Peter Chase and Graham Belle, they were talking to us about permaculture and also about apiculture, which is related to bees. And Dr. Kirk Douglas, the director for the Center for Biosecurity Studies at the Cave Hill campus, was also on with us today. You've been watching Face It and Fix It. Joyanne should be back with us, fingers crossed, all things being equal, and her feeling a lot better on Monday. I'm Joe Ford. Bye-bye.